Hello everybody and welcome back to Andrew's Arts Models. So today I've got the Academy 135 scale MERKAVA IV LIC with Legends Productions aftermarket components, and this was a heck of a build. Great kit, loved it. Most of the build was very straightforward. The only part I had a little bit of trouble with was just locating the bottom parts on the hull here, because there weren't really many locator pins or anything like that, and it didn't want to sit properly. So really put a fair whack of glue onto it around the edges and taped it down just to make sure it was nice and safe before we went on to prepping the resin parts. Now, as always with the resin parts, before you use them, make sure you've washed them with some soapy water and clean off the residue, and always wear a particle mask. And you can see here I'm actually adding water to the parts that I'm cutting, and that's just to keep the dust down. So you can see it's just piling up in front of the part there, and I'll just keep adding it and adding it and adding it. I do have a mask on still, but because you don't want to breathe this stuff in, it's pretty bad for you. But yeah, definitely that's one neat tip of keeping the dust down. So you can see here I've already added most of the photo etch. I'm just gluing a few pieces down, little aerials and things like that for the back decking. The aftermarket parts go on flawlessly. They really are well made, and you can see there I've got some of the kit photo etch stuff there. Now you can see the ball and chain armor that they had there for the kit. It's kind of flat, and well, it's really two-dimensional, and there's these little balls on the sprue that you're meant to cut off and stick out, and I'm just really not all that excited about it. If I had to do it again, I'd probably give that a shot as opposed to doing the ball and chain armor. That was a little bit tricky, but everything else is pretty much straightforward. But there's a lot of parts that don't have locator pins, so just make sure you get the positioning right before you glue them down. So I was really anxious to give this plastic putty by Vallejo a go. I think next time I'll let it dry a little bit more before I wipe off some of the excess. I did it a bit too quick, but lesson learned. You can see there I've got the chain and ball armor ready to go. There's a lot of well, chain full of blue balls really. You just cut off individually. There's heaps of them in the packet, so you're not going to run low on those. And the same, they've got a little bit of jeweler's chain in there too, and there's heaps of that too. So don't worry if you miss parts or damage parts. There's plenty to work with that comes with the Legends Productions kit. So yeah, don't stress about that. Alright, so this really was the quickest way of doing the ball and chain armor. Just pre-cut your lengths of chain, pre-cut the balls, and just dip the little bit of chain in the glue and then touch it to the ball that you want to use, and it just sticks right away. Really easy. So that's Bob Smith Industries glue that I'm using. I don't need a kicker or anything to use with it. It just works really well. The first bracket I tried, I assembled off the kit and learnt my lesson. So it's definitely easier to assemble them on the kit. Basically, put the bracket on first, put one link on the bracket first, so you've got something to hang the rest of the chain armour off. Once it's attached, that makes it a lot easier to get things going. So you can see there the effect. It looks quite good. There's a few little bits and pieces there that I need to just straighten out with the glues, dried the chains together, but that's to be expected. Same thing happens when you paint it. Even with the airbrushing, you'll get a little bit of it that sticks together, but just at the end of it, you can just loosen it off. But you can see there, I'm putting the bracket on. I've already got one link on there, and I can just hook all the rest of the armour onto that. It's much easier. In case you're wondering what I used to cut the chain, I just use little jeweler's snips. These actually used to belong to my grandfather, so I'm glad I've still got them and I was able to put them to good use. Alright, so the rest of the video I'm going to speed up just a little bit so we get to the end. It's all pretty straightforward painting. Just doing pre-shading with a little bit of Nato black. Once I've done the pre-shade coat, I'll actually seal it with a clear and then do the colour coat and then seal it again. And the reason why I do that is because sometimes when you're using a very thin paint, which I will be using with the colour coat, when you go to clear coat it, it'll actually bleed through and you'll get the Nato black coming through the top coat. So I'm always just really careful of that now. I've ruined a couple of kits doing that, and so I found the best way to do it is to just hit it with a bit of clear and wait for that to dry, then do your colour on top. So some of you might have noticed there's a couple of the ball and chain links missing. I've left a few of them off. They came off and I could have reattached them, but I thought, make it a bit more different. Not all neat and perfect. Just make sure you give everything a good coat with the Nato black underneath, because it's obviously going to be pretty dark. Along the sides here, you've got the skirt armour on the side, as well as the flaps to keep the dust down. The flaps keep the dust down are rubber, so since I've already done those in Nato black, I'll just put a little bit of tape over them just to screen them from the next part. They're not going to be perfect anyway, but because we're going to do a bit of dust on the vehicle, but it just neatens them up a bit. you go. Tank's pretty much complete as far as build goes. I do keep it in sub-assemblies, so the hull's in 2 parts and the turret's one piece, just to make it a bit easier. I add a bit of buff to my primary colour, just to tone it down a little bit. You don't want to use a white, it's just going to look too bleached out. So you really want a warmer colour. So you can use a bit of yellow, or in this case, as I said, I used a buff. It's got a bit of a sandy colour to it, just to give you some highlights and a bit of variation on the top before I get on with the rest of the weathering. Quite a few reference photos online show that the tarps and things that they've got on the back of these little canvas is a slightly different colour to the actual tank, and I just thought a nice way to make it stand out a little bit more is we'll do those, and we'll do highlights and washes and things over the top of them, just to really show off the detail from the Legend Productions kit. Really couldn't fault it. It was really nice to work with, and the detail on the resin was fantastic. Really the only thing you need to watch out for is when you put the rear of the turret on, it is very heavy because it's one big solid block of resin, really. So I added a fair bit of counterweight to the front, and overall the model's quite heavy. But yeah, you need to add a bit of counterweight, otherwise the turret, every time you move the model, the turret's just going to swing around on you. There aren't really very many decals for this kit to add on, which is actually quite nice. I like it nice and simple when it gets to that stage sometimes. The kit decals perform very well. They conform the surface beautifully. I do tear one of them, and that's nothing to do with the decal. It's just me being too rough for them and being a modeler. But yeah, they do work really well. You can see here, even though I've torn it, it's relatively easy to get it into a nice position. Now, for those of you that may not be familiar with these vehicles, they're very different to most modern tanks in that the engine or the power pack of the vehicle is right up at the front. So if you're going to be doing oil effects and streaks and things, that's where you want it. You don't want to be doing it at the back so much. At the back there's actually a door in the middle of the hull that can actually load infantry, and off the top of my head I think it's 3 or 4 can get in there if need be, which is good if you have a vehicle that's knocked out and you're nearby and you want to recover them and have them safe under the armour. It's quite actually a very handy thing to do. But yeah, just remember, engine up front, so that's where most of your grease and grime's going to be. I just love how much this stands out, the detail on this stands out once you've done just a simple brown wash over the top of it with the TAMIYA brown. It's just awesome. Very, very nice aftermarket piece from Legend Productions. So yeah, definitely worth the money. Can be a bit of a headache doing the ball and chain armor, I'm not going to lie, but definitely worth the money. So you can see here I use a bit of German red brown from TAMIYA, and then I go to a deck tan to do some of the shading as well as a buff, just to do the dust and dirt effects. The dirt effects are actually really quite interesting depending on where the vehicle is. In Israel you'll see that there's a lot of dusty terrain obviously, but there's also a lot of earthy reds in certain areas, so I really wanted to try and incorporate a little bit of both worlds if I could, and you'll see that in the paint and in the pigments that I use. So I'm sure some of you are right about now asking why I haven't done any paint chipping or rust effects and things like that. And that's just for the most part, the Israeli vehicles seem to be really well maintained. A lot of the photos you see, yes, they get dusty and dirty, but you don't seem to see very many of them with paint chips and scrapes and things like that. I mean, of course there are some, but a lot of them for the most part are really well maintained. So since this was a piece from a mate and he wants to show it off his home, I thought, look, we'll just keep it simple. Keep it nice and looking pretty. A little bit of dust on it, but otherwise, yeah, keep it basic. Right, so the final step before I completed the model is just to hit the whole kit with a bit of Flat Clear from Tamiya. Just to unify the colours, make sure it's all nice and matte and that all the pigments and everything are fixed to the kit and they won't rub off and it won't get fingerprints, etc, etc, etc. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked it. I had an absolute blast building this little kit. It was a challenge definitely with the armour, but well worth it, and I suggest you go out and grab one and buy the aftermarket set. You will not be disappointed, but you will likely need a magnifying glass. Have a look at my Facebook page for upcoming builds. We've got some on there for voting at the moment, so you can help us decide what to choose. Thanks again for watching. If you like this video, great, please let me know. If you don't like this video, okay, sorry, please let me know. Always trying to improve the channel, so any feedback's welcome. Thank you again for watching and have a great day.